This show is brought to you by iRacing.com, where you can get 2 free months with the purchase of 1 for only $12 by going to iRacing.com/membership. Welcome to Inside Sim Racing and our review of NASCAR 2014. I'm Darin Gangi here with...
I'm Jason Dunnington.
And NASCAR this is their 4th year, and this is done by Utechnics, or they're going by ETX Racing or something like that now. Yeah. And that includes this title and Auto Club Revolution, as far as I know. I don't know if they have any others planned. But, and this is on the PC, and Jason actually tested at his house, and I tested here, back on Frankenrig back there, and we had it set up on a single monitor here as well. So we've tested it in a bunch of different configurations, and I'm going to tell you what we think. Going to change our scoring up a little bit. In the recent past, we've done the rev scale, and we haven't scored each individual category. We're going to go back to scoring each individual category. So we're going to score physics, graphics, sounds, and we're only going to go to 5. We're cut the scale in half.
Yeah, because we never went lower than 5 anyway. You know?
Yeah, exactly. So it just makes sense to 5 being best, 1 being worst. Or I guess we could score 0.
We could.
Yeah, but we're just going to keep it in the 5 system, and again, 5 being best, 0 being worst. So a little bit on our specs, running with a Thrustmaster. Well, actually, I was running with Thrustmaster TX.
So, and what I'm running with at home is a G27 with Club Sport pedal version 2 wheels.
A little bit on our settings for the force feedback. We originally cranked everything up, and it just seemed like it kept pulling to the right.
It kept doing weird. I couldn't interpret the feel of what it was trying to transmit to you.
Yeah,
it was weird.
So we lowered the force. There's force feedback, road feedback, and vibration. We cranked vibration up, cranked road feedback up, and turned force feedback down to about 30, 35 seemed to be pretty good.
Yeah.
And then running 900 degrees of rotation. At least I was. Jason, I think, tried 360, but if you're going to run 900 degrees of rotation, turn the sensitivity up on your steering, and that seems to work pretty good.
Right.
So, unfortunately, I couldn't run anything else. Couldn't run SimVibe, couldn't run our virtual dashes, none of that stuff, because none of it's compatible. And basically, this is a console port. This title's mainly geared for the PS3 and the Xbox 360, and then it's really ported over to the PC. And one of the biggest things that tells you that is all the button configuration and everything is like for an Xbox 360 controller.
Yeah, push an A or B,
doesn't work.
No, it's not so bueno.
And talking about before we get into the certain categories, we'll talk a little bit about the interface. So, for instance, in the replay interface, and a lot of times, actually, you can use the mouse to click on those buttons, and it moves forward. Now, when you're trying to look at a replay, half of that stuff doesn't work, or you can't figure out which keyboard button or the button on your wheel activates
what you're trying to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it gets a little confusing, which kind of sucks. Otherwise, the user interface is pretty cool. It hasn't really changed much in the 4 years since we first started reviewing this title, or since they started developing this title and got the license. But it's pretty easy to get around and navigate, so we'll give them that. So I think we should just get into our scores, maybe talk a little bit about each category. We don't want to go too long, but really want to get into the nuts and bolts of this title, starting with the physics. Now, originally we had given it a 3. We both gave it a 3. And what you're going to tell you, I'm going to tell you Jason's score and my score. We originally gave it a 3, and then we went back and played some more, and we kind of realized we were being a little too generous.
Yeah, incredibly. I think.
So what do you score it now?
On physics, really, well, we have to be constant scores, not like 1.5 or whatnot, because I suppose I would throw it up at 2.
Dude, I'm right there with you. I'm between a 1 and a 2, so we'll be generous on that and give it a 2. Physics are just
dated.
Yeah, they are dated, and again, it's probably geared more towards the console. And so, actually, let's back up a little bit. Is this an arcade title, Simcade, or simulation? Definitely Simcade. I think this falls right in the middle because there's lots of things that you can simulate as far as like a real NASCAR weekend and full-length races and
Right.
Stuff like that. So it's definitely in the simcade. There's some arcade elements, and again, there's some sim elements. So that being said, even though it's simcade, you know, some of the other simcade titles that we've done, Forza, Gran Turismo, probably closer to the 4 on a simcade scale for physics. This version of NASCAR 14, probably right around a 2.
Yeah.
And it's, so really let's get into the physics. It's, you know, one of the biggest reasons why I dropped it from a 3 is, man, you could bang that thing against the wall and just start fishtailing all over the place and just get right back straight like it was nothing.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just odd, you know, especially you catch, you know, a fender from somebody else, you know, one of your AI guys, they fender you know, you throw them up, you slam the wall harder than, the car should be done, and, oh wait, you're still driving and you go in for an 8-second pit repair. It's like, oh, all right, let's continue on now and ready to go.
Yeah, so the physics definitely needs some work. And so let's transition that into force feedback. Force feedback's there. Again, we told you we had to tone it down really to get a better feel. And honestly, because it was just, the best way to put it, it felt like it was just jerk. I don't know if it's because every time it hit a bump or something, but it was, which I don't think the bumps are modeled accurately, but we'll talk about that in the tracks. But you were just getting this weird twitch to the right. And it seemed once we turned it down into the 30% range, it definitely was able to.
It went away,
yeah.
But then you lost that any real feel of the road too. But at least you didn't have the damn twitching going on in that, which was just crazy. It was really weird because I kept trying to interpret what it was trying to be, you know, a bump but no, it was on Daytona and stuff like that.
Well, then you talk about road feel. Now, I've heard from NASCAR drivers, Dale Earnhardt Jr., they don't feel much. You know, they got like major power steering in those cars, and they're not, you know, they can really work those wheels a lot, and they're not getting a whole ton of feedback coming through that wheel. They're getting the seat of the pants. You know, they can feel what that car's doing under their ass.
Compared to what we have to deal with.
Exactly, where we're having to, you know, for me, I like it turned up even in iRacing, where a lot of the Ray Alfalas and Tyler Hudsons and, you know, the guys that are running in the top iRacing series, they've got it turned almost off.
Yeah. Some of them do have it off, don't they?
Yeah. You know, and you may ask, why aren't we going to compare this to NASCAR or iRacing? They are not marketing this title to go against iRacing. This is a mass market title. You know, you can think of it along the lines of a Madden franchise or something like that, where they're coming out with the new drivers and the new paint schemes and stuff every year.
Like a fanfare game.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. So, and they told us flat out when we interviewed one of the lead developers or producers, and he told me, Ed Martin is his name, he told me, we're not, in the interview, you can go back and check our interview with him, we are not going after that crowd. You know, we're not going for the hardcore. You know, I wish they would. You know, all these guys that are making the PC ports, why can't they just make the PC version hardcore?
Yeah.
You know,
right.
So I really would like to see these guys and Codemasters put out a super hardcore version on the PC for guys like us. Because I actually had to keep reminding Jason, dude, don't compare this to iRacing.
Yeah, because I was going to kill it. Kill it. I hadn't.
You know, compare this to a Gran Turismo's version of NASCAR, which is very limited. Jason was even saying he'd rather run that. But anyway, we'll get to more of that maybe in the final thoughts. So force feedback. Jason gave it a 1, I gave it a 2. Graphics. This is where this title actually shines a little bit.
It really does. I agree.
Some really cool, actually I would say even better than some of the higher end PC titles as far as reflections and almost maybe too much. Like we were kind of making fun of how many sparks. I mean, it's like spark showers.
Oh, yeah, it's like raining sparks sometimes. I had a long distance between the group of cars, and I was just sitting in a shower of sparks on some corners going, okay, that should have been kind of over and done with by the time I got to it. But
cars rub together and all sorts of stuff comes flying off of them. So a little overdone, but again, very nice looking graphics. We were getting really decent frame rates.
Right.
I just got a new video card in Frankenrig back there. Got a GTX 780 Ti, and was pretty much able to run with everything on, triple screens, and was maintaining 60 plus frames a second, which, again, back to the PC, there's some PC titles that have been only on the PC.
And we can't even make that.
Yeah. So Graphics are well done. Frame rates nicely. And again, we ran it on this system too. This has got a 760. Jason's running at home, triple screens. Now, how was it at home?
It was pretty good.
Yeah.
I had to tone it down some, and I was messing with a lot of different settings, and it was as good as I got it. Like Darin said, he had to keep talking me down because I was really not very pleased with playing.
So, but what about the graphics? Were the graphics quality good on your system at home?
Yeah, the graphics were pretty at home, for sure.
Yeah, don't get off track here, bud.
Sorry.
Okay, so moving on from graphics, next up sounds. Another area where this title shines to an extent. Did we give it a score on graphics? 4 and 4 was our score. 4 out of 5. Sounds, same thing. 4 out of 4 or 4 out of 5. Both of us gave it. The tracks have ambient sounds, so you hear announcers. Even when you're in the car or coming down pit lane. And I'm not talking about the in-game your spotter. You hear ambient sounds. The crowds and stuff like that, and the tire, as far as you're hearing the tires going through the corner, the engine. The wreck sounds are friggin' intense.
Yeah.
It sounds like a train wreck.
Yeah, yes, definitely.
So again, sounds are well done. You definitely give them a thumbs up there. Next, track modeling or tracks. Every track in the NASCAR schedule is in the game.
Yeah.
It seems like they're modeled. We're going to compare that to iRacing because iRacing's got the laser scan tracks, so everybody's pretty much comparing to iRacing as far as their tracks go, and they seem modeled pretty accurately.
Yeah, quite well.
As far as the banking goes, distance between the straights to the corners, stuff like that. Where they suffer a little bit is just not a lot of road feel, or it feels like the road or the track surface is just kind of fudged to an extent.
Yeah.
So and that's where they're not laser scanned, so they're not perfectly accurate. I mean, they do have life, but I think it's faked.
Very much so. I agree.
So we both gave it a 3 in the tracks. Fun factor. Now, you originally scored it a 1, I scored it a 2. Now, after we found the highlight deal, did that bump it up a little bit for you, or you still at a 1 out of 5?
Oh boy, that's a tough question because I mean, in a sense, yeah, it was more fun on that, but I couldn't go more than a 1.5. I would love to say 2.
A 1 out of 5 or a 1.5?
A 1.5 out of 5. Because
no half scores.
I know. So I'm just gonna actually keep it at 1 as fun factor.
Okay,
Yeah.
And I gave it a 2. And what we're talking about, you can take highlights, and it only has from last year, and I think they'll add DLC where they'll add scenarios from the current season, and then you can race that particular scenario and change history to an extent.
Yeah.
And that was cool, but like the first one was you're Dale Jr. and you got to beat Jimmy Johnson in the Daytona 500. I think Dale finished second in 2013. He won it this year, obviously, but and Jimmy won it. And so you have to draft and win the Daytona 500. Well, I did it, and I was expecting fanfare and hoopla and nothing. It was like, check, you did it.
Right, burnouts, you don't even get to do that. Although in career mode, they do tell you to roast them up, and so you light them up a little bit, and you can But in that, I thought that was going to give you something too, and that's kind of, again, that's why I couldn't really give it more than a higher score than I did, because sure, it gave you the highlights, but that's all I had. I mean, you had nothing else besides. You didn't even get a cool burnout at the end if you did beat it or anything, or congratulations or nothing.
So again, fun factor, 1, 2. AI, artificial intelligence. Now, we've talked about this a bunch. AI has got to be one of the hardest things, that entire model, the hardest things to program in a sim racing or racing game. And our scores were 2 and 3. Now, I was a little more forgiving on it because I'm really thinking about the fact that they're putting 42 cars on the track. And this is NASCAR. Road racing cars spread out, and you don't have that door-to-door, bumper-to-bumper racing that you do in NASCAR. And overall, I think they do a pretty good job of it. You can run 2 abreast, 3 abreast. They're aggressive. You pass them, they'll try to pass you back, where, some of the titles can get really passive.
Yeah.
Like F1 2013. You make a pass, those guys don't come back after you for the most part.
Right.
You can keep them behind you forever.
These guys tend to show you some rage every now and then. You come in, you bump them a little too hard, and you make a pass. Next thing you know, oh, you're turned around, and it was by the guy that you hit too hard after your spotter tells you that, oh, you probably shouldn't hit him that hard and blow, you know.
So anyway, Jason gave the AI 2, I gave it a 3, and that's going to move us to multiplayer. So multiplayer, if you're trying to find an open lobby race on the PC, it's a friggin' ghost town. You couldn't find any. I didn't see any.
I found one dude one time.
Yeah. And for multiplayer, Jason gave it a 1, and I gave it a 3, and here's why. You know, again, this is more geared towards the console, you know, and honestly, if you're on the PC, I recommend iRacing or even Arca Sim Racing if you want to do, you know, multiplayer. There's leagues in both. Obviously, you can run in the series that, you know, iRacing's got a ton of series. It is a lot more expensive because you have to buy all the tracks and cars and all that stuff and pay a monthly fee. But I'm looking more at the guys that are either on the consoles. You know, I just met David Ankeny at the iRace for Life seminar, and their league came from the Xbox 360, RCRL. And, you know, and they ran it for years. And I know there's a lot of guys out there that run leagues, and if they're looking for NASCAR and the ability to run at all the tracks with all the paint schemes and pick their favorite car or driver or whatever, I think it's a pretty cool format. And I believe it's 16 max on the PC, and I would imagine it's similar on the Xbox 360. We don't have a copy of either of those, so I couldn't tell you. But, and I guess I could look it up, but so could you. But in that light, and we ran a multiplayer race against each other, and it was kind of fun. I mean,
yeah, for just the two of us on there, we couldn't put any extra AI in it, you know.
That was a bummer. I wanted to add some AI cars. That would have really, I think, enhanced the one-on-one aspect.
Because you would have to find them in the field like you would normally anyway, right?
But built right into the game, they have a whole league function where it keeps track of your points and stuff like that. So I think the multiplayer is pretty cool. So again, I gave it a 3. Jason gave it a 1. Anything else on the multiplayer before we go?
I would add, I guess, well, personally, the only thing I would think of, I agree with Darin on the point, but at the same time, if I was going to be in a league, I wouldn't spend the money on, I would have been running my older NASCAR game. I'd have been happy with that.
Well, and here's where I debated him on that. Older NASCAR games, they close the lobbies, so you can't hook up multiplayer anymore.
You can't even go any kind of,
No, like Gran Turismo 5, he was doing some stuff on that. They're going to close down those lobbies soon. So you're only able to do it on Gran Turismo 6, and you know, Gran Turismo 6, I mean, if you want to run like real NASCAR, I mean, how many ovals are there?
Yeah.
Very few. So that's why I gave it a little bit higher score. Jason still doesn't want to give it higher than a 1, so we're going to keep it at that. Next up, damage. And we're just going to combine visual and physical damage. Now, honestly, I think I would drop at a point here too now after I've gone back and looked at a review we did 4 years ago. The damage was more intense 4 years ago in this title.
Yeah, NASCAR the game, right?
Yeah, and I don't know if that has to do with helping keep the frame rates up, because you start damaging the car and the frame rates definitely start taking a hit. But, man, you could beat the crap out of these cars and they're not taking on that much damage.
No, you can still drive them around the track and still be competitive, you know, so.
And in that first iteration of the game, you could like rip fenders off and really tear the cars up. And you can tear them up here, you can damage the engine, and you can go in and get stuff fixed in the pits, but I think they've gone backwards a little bit on the damage. Still gave it a 3, because some of the visual stuff's cool, and again, you still can't, like we were racing our multiplayer race, I hit the wall, and I was a second slower. Instantly.
Yeah.
You know, I could not catch him. And then, actually, I tanked it, brought the caution out, went in and fixed the car, and ended up winning the race because I think you got damaged in the last couple laps.
A little bump, yeah. And mine only turned yellow, but I really didn't feel like it slowed me down. But at that time, I already lost the momentum, so there was nothing to do. We only had a couple laps left, and I couldn't come back from it. So.
Yeah, so 3. We're both giving it a 3 there. And the last score is UI or presentation. Jason gave it a 3, I gave it a 4. I like the UI, honestly, on that, and it hasn't changed much over the last 4 years, but I've honestly liked it the whole time. I like the loading screens where the trivia, I mean, I get caught up in trying to
in the trivia part?
Do good in the trivia. It's easy to navigate, like I mentioned at the top of the show, and visually, I think it looks cool. I mean, you start in a garage setting and...
Yeah, and the ambiance in there.
Yep.
That's kind of neat. The only thing I have a beef with, I felt that it was so dated. Well, we were looking at the NASCAR the game. Oh, they had the trivia in that too. You know, it was just very interesting that, well, you didn't make anything really new. I actually, originally, I thought the Dirt 2 guys got their fingers into this on that UI, because it just had that weird old school Dirt feel, you know, how it just kind of...
Which, in my opinion, was one of the best UIs made, so that's why I gave it a 4. Jason still won't give it more than a 3, but...
It's dated.
It is dated, in my opinion, but... In my opinion as well, but... Why fix it if it's not broken?
It does work good. That is true. It is true. I guess I was expecting more, and plus I was a little frustrated with the bugs that were in it that were kicking my computer out. My screens, I'd be in a game, and all of a sudden I'd go black, and then my screen slowly start coming back on, but yet the car's not moving yet, and all of a sudden the car's moving, but my screens haven't quite caught up yet. And then, you know, trying to, you know, readjust. That was kind of, I just had a lot of frustrations with it. I've messed with it for quite a while. And so my points were a little harsh, I think, because of my frustration.
All right, well, fair enough. Okay, so now to our final score. Overall, Jason scored at 24 points. I scored at 30 points, so I was definitely a lot more generous. Jason ends up coming to 2.2, or to be exact, 2.18 was his score out of 5. And mine was 2.72 out of 5. So neither of us scored it up to a 3 total. I guess that's going to lead us to our pros and cons. And actually, I think we pretty much went over all of them because we pretty much went into detail in all those things. So why don't we just get to final thoughts? You know, Jason said it feels like it's a regurgitated title, and I totally agree. They haven't made that big of a jump from NASCAR the game. This is really just, honestly, you Technics, you guys are milking this license. You guys need to do something different. I believe they even had maybe trucks and Nationwide in one of the versions, but how about some trucks? How about some Nationwide? How about some...
SK mods and touring.
Yeah, how about some local short track stuff? You guys got the NASCAR license. Why don't you milk that by adding more to this title instead of just regurgitating the same thing over and just changing the drivers out and the car, the paints? Otherwise, this title hasn't gotten that much better. Come out with a hardcore version on the PC. I mean, sure, you're competing with iRacing to an extent, but you guys have AI. iRacing doesn't.
Right.
So, come on, guys. Let's step it up here. I mean, you hired Richard Towler. Shame on you, Richard Towler, for letting this get out. I don't know if you know who Richard Towler is. He was the first iRacing NASCAR champion who then got hired by these guys. And...
Richard, we need to slap you, man. Come on.
Yeah,
what are we doing?
Dude, get it together, man. Come on, let's make this more, at least again on the PC. You know, if you come out with this again next year, we're really going to beat it up. Yeah. I mean, you guys, I think I was generous getting you close to a 3. Jason was probably more in line where you should have been. I guess I was again looking at it more as a console title, Simcade, you know, not really competing against iRacing, where Jason really had that iRacing theme in his head.
Well, I'm just a sim racer, you know, when you want to race and you want to have that feeling of some kind of an accomplishment, which you don't get that. I mean, and then of course, I normally get that from racing multiplayer, not AI, because AI is a computer and you just take time and you can memorize what they're doing and figure it out. But people are always different, and when you don't have any multiplayer, for guys like myself, I got nothing for you.
Well, again, they do have multiplayer. You would have to, on the PC, you'd have to be on a league. Honestly, if you're going to run on the console and you're not on a league, it's just going to be a crash fest anyway. So, you know, I said this on my Gran Turismo 6 review. In a league environment, personally, I could see having fun with it. Like I asked Jason, I said, what if we got, he kept, let me actually finish this. What if we got 20 guys or 16 guys together, because that's the max, I believe, and all of us raced, you know, and had a race or had a little mini season? He's like, well, I wouldn't talk my friends into buying this. But my point was, there's a lot of people that are afraid to make that transition to the PC, and the only type of racing they're going to be doing now, or maybe this is going to be their first look at racing, it's going to be on the console. So for that, I think they've done a pretty good job. And I think they've done a pretty good job on all 4 versions, but again, they haven't really advanced.
Yeah.
There's not much advancement from NASCAR the game to NASCAR 14. And why'd they take the game out? Because it's still gamey. But that's pretty much it for me. Anything else?
Yeah, I really got nothing. Yeah,
You wanted more.
I wanted more. I was just really dissatisfied all around. It started out and just kind of kept getting worse. And then the bugs, and I'm looking on forums, they have, there's a huge laundry list of problems that are going.
And shame on you guys, you Technics, for not ironing these bugs out of the last 3 versions, because...
What have you been doing for the last 4 years?
Well, and I went back to review Tom Hackey, who worked for the show, did a review of this in 2011 when the first one came out, and all he could talk about in the first look was, man, this thing's full of bugs, they're going to be patching it, and
feels like a beta, on and on.
Yeah, what's going on, guys? You're in year 4 now, and you haven't ironed out some of these bugs, and it's just disappointing. We just expected more. So
it just feels like 2013 or 2012 again, or maybe a jumbulation of all of them combined to throw it out for this year.
Yep. So that's going to wrap it up. Hopefully you've enjoyed our review. Got a feeling the guys at Technics didn't. But hey, man, hopefully that'll light a fire under you guys to make this better next year. Make us a hardcore version or step it up on the PC at least.
Step it up all the way around and you might do good.
How about a next-gen version? Come on, guys. Next-gen console's been out now for 6 months, 4 months, whatever it is.
What are you working on?
Let's see something on the next-gen systems, too. Yep. So for Jason Dunnington, I'm Darin Gangi. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, come to our website, isrtv.com. That's going to wrap it up. We'll see you guys next time.